This is number 50 for the MAT 1033 final exam review. It asks us to solve x squared minus 8x equals 20. So first thing first, we have to get in standard form. Remember, standard form is set equal to 0. So I have to move that 20 over. It's positive 20. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. So that way 20 minus 20 goes to 0 and cancels out. We are left with x squared minus 8x minus 20 equals 0. So we now have it in standard form. So now I can start to factor. Remember, very important, our first step in factoring is GCF. What do they all have in common? What's our greatest common factor? But there's nothing that x squared, negative x, and negative 20 have in common. So there's no GCF. So we can continue factoring. Remember, in standard form, we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So our a value here is 1, our b value is negative 8, and our c value is negative 20. We're looking to see what two numbers multiply together to give us a times c, so 1 times negative 20, and what same two numbers add together to give us b, which is negative 8. So that'll be negative 10 and positive 2. Negative 10 times positive 2 is negative 20. Negative 10 plus 2 will give us negative 8. Remember, we are doing this to split up our middle b term of negative 8x. So x squared is staying the same. Instead of negative 8x, we're going to use the two numbers in our blank. So we have negative 10x plus 2x, and then our minus 20 is staying the same, equals 0. So we now have 4 terms. I can now factor by grouping. I can group the first two, group the second two. Just looking at the first group, just looking at x squared minus 10x, GCF, what do they have in common? I notice they both have an x. So we're going to factor out that x from both terms. Remember, factoring is the same thing as dividing. So we're going to divide out that x. Bringing it out front, we are left with x squared divided by x is x, minus 10x divided by x, those x's cancel. We're left with negative 10. Now looking at the next two, 2x minus 20. They both have a 2 in common. So we are going to factor or divide out that positive 2. So bringing that positive 2 out front, we're left over with 2 divided by 2 cancels, goes to 1. X, negative 20 divided by 2 will give us negative 10. And then, of course, equals 0. So we're left with x times x minus 10 plus 2 times x minus 10. So they both have x minus 10 in common. That's our GCF. That's going out front. That is one factor. Whenever we factor out that x minus 10, we are left over with x plus 2. That will be our other factor. And then equals 0. So we now have it in factor form of x minus 10 times x plus 2 equals 0. So our last step in solving this, we are going to set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 10 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. And solve each one separately to find out what x equals. So for this one, we're going to add 10 to both sides. And we get x equals positive 10. Over here, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And we get x equals negative 2. So those are our two answers, x equals 10 and x equals negative 2. That's number 50 from the MAT 1033 final exam review.